We're going to look at the same implementation that we were looking at yesterday. Share screen. And here we go. So you should see, yep, the same EDM that we were looking at yesterday. This is the main, again, the home screen. And we said it gives us an idea what's going on in the environment. Now, there aren't a lot of live connections in this particular EDM instance, but you get an idea of what's going on with the different monitored systems, monitored pieces of equipment, anything else in the environment that you happen to be monitoring. So you saw that here on this Linux system, we did have some memory issues at one point. But overall, that was at the end of January. But overall, the system has been behaving pretty well. So that's the first thing we wanted to talk about is alerts. In order for these alerts to be presented, we have to actually configure them. And configuring the alerts is really pretty easy if you know where you want to have your settings. So we're going to take a look at these alerts that are set for the Linux system, and then we'll create one for the Strapper. It's really pretty straightforward. We'll just kind of pick a value. So when we create alerts, either you know where you want the alert to be triggered because you're familiar with either the system itself or the activity that's going to be happening on that system, or you can take a look at what's going on right now and adjust your alerts accordingly. So what do I mean by that? Well, if we go to visualization, and I'm going to show you just a really quick overview of what's going on this Linux system, you can see that CPU is generally pretty low, less than 20%. Memory free is less than 40%. And I have some network traffic. And then in general, my disk is not very busy either. So if I wanted to maybe generate an alert if CPU reaches 50%, right? Because it's not very busy. So if CPU really went that high, that might be an aberration. And if I look even a little bit further, I'm going to pop out this chart and extend the time. So when I say edit time, I can go back right now I've got last hour. I can say, show me maybe the last week. There should be a last 7 days here. And so when I look at the last 7 days, there really wasn't much in terms of utilization here, right? So when I know what would be out of bounds, I can set my alert accordingly. And we do actually have an alert group. If we look on the alerts page, the list of triggered alerts, which is duplicated on the home page, and we have our actual alert groups. We do have a default alert group for Linux and Unix systems. You can have as many as you want, but let's take a look at what this one involves. So we have a handful of alerts here, 7 of them, and I do have an alert already triggered on CPU, and it says, let me know if CPU is greater than 90. So in this case, this system would have to be really, really busy to push 90%. And I have memory free. Let me know if memory free is less than 5.9. So based on what we know about the system, we can adjust this. I can come in here and edit this CPU alert and say, you know what? I really want it to be 80%, right? So I can change that, and I'm going to change my little message here as well, 80%. And when I finish, EDM will automatically, dynamically pick up the change that I made in this alert system. And why is that important? It's because I don't want to have to be, configuring multiple things just to make a change in an alert that already exists. Now, I'm familiar, I've mentioned this before, with IT systems, and EDM has default alert groups for different IT systems, and we have to depend on our customers to know where the alerts should be for their different manufacturing. Packing lines, bottlers, conveyor belts, whatever they are, right? Because there are so many different options. And so it's hard for us to do a default alert group for that, but let's take a look at the ones that we have here. So we're going to use the exact same type of settings, okay? Remember when we were looking at the strapper yesterday? So we have this strapper visualization, and you remember it was on a cycle. It kind of went up and down and up and down. So our maximum value here is about 23 or so. It does look like it exceeded, 24 at one point. But let's set an alert at 22. And the reason I'm going to set it at 22 is because I know it will be triggered. So if I go back to the alerts, I don't have any strapper alerts. So I'm going to actually start from the beginning. Rather than looking at an existing alert group, we're going to create one. So I'm going to go to the alert groups, and I'm going to start by adding an alert group, and we'll just call it strapper alerts. The description is optional, but that's basically what it is. When I save this, EDM now says, great, what metrics do you want to put into your alert group? And I need a list of metrics. We'll get the strapper list. And in that strapper metric list, I had 2 conveyors. I had some status information. I can always set a status, right? Let me know when the status equals 1 or 0. But I want to know when the RPMs are greater than 22. So I'm going to select one, select this metric, and EDM gives me the alert configuration screen. So we have the option. Sometimes we want to know if things are higher than a threshold. Sometimes we want to know if they're lower than a threshold. So we're going to say greater than or equal to 22. And then what is the rest of this stuff? These are just fine-tuning the alerts and configuring the actions. So when strapper RPMs for the conveyor belt goes greater than 22, what do you want me to do? The first thing is I can configure a message. So, the most straightforward one is just that RPMs are greater than 22. You could spell. Okay. But you can put, a whole paragraph in here if you wanted to. Check the conveyor speed, instructions to operators, whatever you want to include here. Now, why are we putting a message here? Because if we send an email, and I can put as multiple email addresses here if I want. I can put Zach's email in here. I can put a support email. I can put whatever I want in here. My message is going to be included in the body of the email. So we can, like I said, we can put as much or as little in there as we want. We can do an RCA report, and that we're going to talk about that in a minute when we talk about correlation. We can send an SNMP trap. So SNMP traps are nice because you could have another ticketing system, for instance, or something like that that receives the trap. The trap is going to contain the information from the alert itself, the name of the metric, the connection name. So our strapper, it'll have the name of the metric, the right RPM. It will have the value 22, but then it'll also have the value of the metric itself, right? So if the value of the metric, we received the data block and it was equal to 23.4, that's what will be included in that SNMP trap. Okay, what is this stuff up here at the top? A time system basically says only evaluate this metric, and there are not any defined here, but we can create a time system that says only evaluate this metric from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, or even, 9 to noon, Monday through Wednesday, or something like that. So what that means is if I know that we're going to have a different, what's the word I want? A different basis of operation. Okay, maybe on Wednesday and Thursdays, we have a different speed that we want to set, right? So we can have check for greater than 22 on Monday and Tuesday, but I have a different alert for Thursday and Friday where it's greater than 40. Okay, so that's what a time system is. Trigger after is used when you want to have EDM wait a little bit, right? And so we might have a little spike up to 22, but then it goes right back down to 20. And in that case, we don't want to get all of these notifications. So we can say, go up over 22, but stay there, right, for a couple of intervals. If our interval is 30 seconds, then we can say stay there for 60 seconds. So I have to get 2 consecutive data blocks from the strapper where the value of this metric, the RPMs, are greater than 22 in this case. So that's what that means. And reset basically says once the speed goes down and I'm less than 22, how long do you want me to wait before I start watching it again? And the default is the very next interval. So let's go ahead and say finish here. And I could even add another metric. Okay, so we had the right conveyor. Well, let's look at the left. We'll select that one. I can set that the same. I can set it someplace else. Let's set that one at 25. And the reason I'm going to do that is so that we don't get too many notifications. And again, right, I can send an email. I can send an SNMP trap. I can play a sound file. We mentioned that yesterday, right? So if I have a wave file, .wav, I can identify that. And if the alert is triggered, then the wave file is sounded. It's going to be sounded at the EDM instance, right? So I would need a speaker attached to that system. So let's finish that. And I'm going to go ahead and say finish. Okay, questions so far? Okay, we talked a little bit yesterday. Why do I want to do this in the first place? Well, because this way I don't have to be watching a data feed continuously. And so I can get it in multiple different ways, the notifications. So I have my strapper alerts now. And what do I need to do? I need to go in and tell EDM to watch these alerts for this connection. So it doesn't do me any good to assign this alert group to a different connection because it doesn't have these metrics, right? And EDM will say, okay, well, you assigned this alert group, but I can't help you because those metrics don't exist in that data feed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the strapper. It's highlighted. It's kind of hard to see, I think, in the display, but this is the strapper connection. You can see now the status is disconnected. I'm going to edit the alert attributes and assign this alert group the strapper that I just created. So I'm going to add that in and say save and save these settings, and then I'm going to start the connection again. So once I start receiving the data again, Now EDM is going to be evaluating those two alerts every time he gets a new data block. How will I know if one of them is actually triggered? Again, it will show up on the alerts page, or it will show up on the home page because I have that dual display. And the other reason that you might want to have that on the home page is because you get the alerts from all of the connections show up on the home page. Now I can create views like all of my active alerts. I just had that one. I can say only show me alerts from a particular group of connections, but we're going to say all triggered alerts. Now, how do I know when I'm going to get this alert? Let's go ahead and take a look at that connection. We're going to refresh it periodically. We'll say 30 seconds. So this is kind of on a cycle, so I expect to get an alert fairly quickly here. So I can also, using that same mechanism, probably should have only created one alert, I can say add alert from any chart. So if I have a display that I'm looking at and there's a spike, I can go, oh, shoot, I thought I had created an alert on that particular metric. And the way that it works is EDM opens this alert dialog box. He shows me all of the metrics that are in this chart that I was looking at, so I can select one, and actually EDM will let you set multiple alerts on the same metric. So we had set a couple here. Let's set one that's artificially high. And so if the conveyor RPMs get up to 50, you know that's a big, big deal. So we'll, create our alert group. And maybe now I want to send this email not just to one person. I want to send it to the whole operations group, right? I want to send it to the whole world, because maybe now this is a big deal, right? That we got over 50. So I'm going to fill out the rest of the alert settings. All I really need is to have the alert itself. And when I say next, in this case, EDM is going to either allow me to add this alert to an existing alert group, like the one I just created, or even create a brand new alert group. So I'll go ahead and say next, and it is assigned already to the Strapper alerts, but he's going to ask me to confirm that, and we'll say finish. And then this is all dynamically updated. Okay, so let's go back and we'll wait a little bit. We should be getting an email for this alert. And let's take a look at a couple of other things with alerts. I showed you that you could do alerts right here from the chart itself. And you can also do that from quick charts. So if I was doing the same thing, I have this Strapper. Let's select it again. Here's the Strapper connection. I can select, again, any metrics that I want. We'll go ahead and add in this one. And this one is a status, right? So we have the value of this particular metric is always 0. So I can set one here. I might want to set that one on 1, right? It's a Boolean value. So I want to know if the value of this metric goes up to 1. So I can say right from here, again, edit the alert. It's the same dialog box that I had before. And in this case, I would say, tell me if the value is 1. It's going to walk through the exact same mechanism that we had seen before. Okay, this is not the same as putting a threshold line. Sure, why my report's not updating here. It's not the same as putting a threshold line on a metric. Okay. So, quick question. Why doesn't it look like my chart is updating? Because it really doesn't. Okay, the reason is because it's displaying last 7 days of data. So if I go back and just say, show me the last hour or so, I might get a better display of what's going on with this strapper. Yeah. Okay, you remember we had that up and down and up and down? Well, it's not as quick as you might think, right? So it's not always going to be as fast as what it looks like. So we're going to wait till that goes for a little bit and then let it trigger an alert for us. And then we'll see what happens when we start getting the alerts. So this one's looks like we're getting yeah, every once in a while. So we'll see if we get an alert triggered. If not, we'll look at a different one. So alerts. We talked about time systems very briefly, but we're going to assume that all of our alerts are always active. So what happens when we get a triggered alert? Well, we talked about this a little bit. When we get a triggered alert, EDM will send the email, and he'll also put an entry in our alerts group. So we have a couple of triggered alerts here. This one is back from January on the Linux system. And you can see now everything is fine. So here we are in February, everything is okay, but EDM does keep track of all of the alerts that have been triggered. I'm going to log into a different EDM instance because it has a few more triggered alerts. And here, this is our production EDM. So this one is where we're monitoring all of our infrastructure, all of our production systems, as well as our routers and switches and some of the hardware in the environment. So you can see here, we have a couple of alerts that are way up. We have disk time is 99% busy. And look at the information that we're saving about these alerts. We have the start time of the alert. In this case, I picked this one because it's only 7 minutes. The name of the system. And so this is a server called Win 2012. It's one of our test systems. And it says that disk time, so that's how much, the percentage of time that the physical disk was busy. And I'm going to click on the alert itself, and EDM will show me visually, open a chart and show me what was going on with that metric. So you can see in general, it was pretty low, right? So the disk was not very busy, but something happened. We actually have a little gap here. So what I would say is most likely the connection went down. And then when it started back up again, there was just a lot of catching up to do. So that's why it went up for a little bit. And you can see back in our alert definition, or our alert notification rather, it was active for 7 minutes. And then it went back down underneath the threshold value. And the message that we have here tells us we hit 99% busy. Our threshold is 96. So we've got all of the information that we need in that alert notification. Okay, the same thing here, another system, queuing was up. We can display, well, in this case, it was just a little spike and everything now is okay. Okay, so really this is a great interactive type of mechanism, so you can see exactly what happened, right? How long was the alert? How bad was the alert? Did everything stay for a long time? No, in this case, it looks like everything is fine, and it has been, for the last little while before and after the alert was triggered. So easy to see what was the impact of that particular alert. Okay, questions so far? Okay, I don't know that we're going to get an actual trigger alert from the one we just set. Let's take a look and see what the email is going to look like. Okay, I have a couple in my email, a couple of alert notifications, and it's going to look something like this. It's an email. Let me pop this out. So the email shows up, and it looks like this. I did a search for IT EDM, which is the name of the system. That's why it's showing up as yellow. So the email says, I have an EDM alert, and this is where it's from. This is the EDM instance. So we know which monitor the email is coming from. He says, you have a Linux system, and at November 6th, at 16:52, memory percent free was less than 5%. It was actually 3.7%. And any message that you included in that message box is going to be shown. And then EDM, or the email, contains a link to actually log into EDM so that you can investigate. So that's what the email is going to look like. And so it's going to pop into anybody's email that is listed. Any questions so far? Okay. Okay, so that's alerts in a nutshell. Now, we talked about expressions yesterday. You remember we had we did a simple expression. We just converted temperature in centigrade to temperature in Fahrenheit. So one of those is a metric that's included in the data block. One of them is an expression, and you can include a metric in the alert, but you can also include expressions, right? Because EDM has calculated that value when he received the data block. So it's all going to show up in the same way. So definitely not a problem to include that. What else can we do from the alert? When I click and I get the alert display, I can go in and, as we said before, I can add another alert. I can also start a correlation. And as we saw, I extended the time, right? So I can go, oh, well, let me see what longer period of time I might want to look at. And I can do anything with that chart that I could do with another pop-out chart from a different part of EDM or a different mechanism, my popped-out reports, for example. So we talked about alerts and the alert notification. We'll see if we actually get an email. But what's the other things that you can do with that? Well, one of the things that you might want to do is correlate. And when I say correlate, what I mean is look at the other metrics to see what might also be out of bounds. You remember when we did the packing line and we looked at this display. Give me a second. So when we look at the packing line display, we notice that both of the conveyors are moving at about the same time. Well, what if they're not? Okay. Or what if there's something else that's moving at that same time that we don't have in our report that we're looking at? So how are we going to find that? The way that we can find that is by doing a correlation. Now, a correlation is basically a mechanism to have EDM go in and look at the behavior of the metrics. Just like we see this behavior right here, we have a repeating rise and fall of the metric. What other metrics are doing that at the same time? So we're going to say correlate, and EDM will open this correlate dialog box. So first thing, I zoomed in to one of those spikes, or whatever you want to call it, one of those high points in the display, rather than doing the correlation across the entire 7 days of this report. The reason I did that is because that would take a while to look at that much data. But I've got a pretty good example of the metrics going up and then coming back down. So when I zoomed in, I now have the 15th from 30 past midnight until 15:53, so about 2 o'clock. EDM picked up that time range on the 15th, most of the day on the 15th, and he identified what 2 metrics, again, were in the chart. So I'm going to leave it at one of them. And by default, he's going to look at all of the other metrics that are in this data source. So we do know that there aren't that many, but let's go ahead and just say correlate. There's the correlate button up at the top. So it takes a second. He is looking through a little bit of data. And what we see here is 2 things: our independent variable, and then which of the metrics from the data source correlated the best. Well, we know that those 2 metrics were very, very well correlated. In fact, they're almost exactly the same. And so EDM has automatically added the 1 metric to the chart. So this is the highest correlation. Over on the right-hand side, you can see that it's a very strong correlation. It's kind of like the bars, the strength bars on your cell phone. But if you want to see the actual correlation value, just go ahead and check the strength box. And what EDM says is it's going to tell you a value between 1 and -1. So that's the correlation coefficient. It's a Pearson's R value. If you have a 1-to-1 correlation, that means those 2 metrics are doing exactly the same thing. And you can see that there are exactly a 1-to-1 correlation between the left and right conveyor. The RPMs for the left and right conveyor motors are exactly the same. But there's another value, this processing status, and it has a 9.7 correlation. So it's going to be pretty close. Let's add that in. We click on the plus button, and EDM will add that value to the chart. So this is the status, for the equipment. Obviously, when it's moving, it's on. Otherwise, it's off. So that's a really straightforward correlation. Now, we also have a negative correlations possible, and that's what the next one is. Basically, it's the opposite, right? So the status is on or the status is off. You can add that one in, and you'll see it's an inverse correlation. I'm going to take a couple of these metrics out. And so I took out the right motor RPM. So we have the left motor. They're pretty much the same. But you can see as one goes up, the other goes down. So that is an inverse correlation, and it's very strong in this case. Now, obviously, we were going to get some results, right, with this very small example of data. Let's see what else we might have. We have, we'll go back and see what other charts we have. Looking at all reports, we have, there's one called Radial Forge. This one has a slightly larger set of data. And I have some reports that are, this one is from a vibration, a different type of fan. You can see there's hammer force. It's from a different type of manufacturing line. And you can see that there are some ups and downs on some of these values. So let's go ahead and pick one. I'm going to pick this one right here. So again, let's look a little bit closer in our time range. We're going to say correlate. And EDM, again, I had two metrics. We're going to, doesn't really matter. Both of these are kind of the same. We'll use hammer force this time. He's going to look at all of the other metrics in this data set. And we didn't really talk about this last time. We're going to show the top 25 closest, the highest results value, right? So let's go ahead and correlate. This is a bigger data set. And so you can see the results are a little bit different. So it turns out that there's a metric. We were looking at hammer force. And there's another metric, some kind of RPMs and speed RPMs. And it's a very good correlation. Okay, so you can see as one goes up, the other one goes up. So one goes down, the other one goes down. Now, they're not necessarily, and the reason I picked this one is to show you a couple of other things. These metrics are not on the same scale. Notice that we have on the left side another y-axis, and EDM will add in the correlation results a new y-axis for each metric that we add into the chart. That's because you could have a value in a very low range, but it is doing the same type of movement, you know, increasing and decreasing in conjunction, but it's at a much higher range. So you can see the value of our hammer force is between 0 and 900, but when we display this other speed metric from LUB, I think it's a lubrication type of mechanism, the values of that metric are between 1300 and 1500. So they're not going to show quite so well if I put them all on the same y-axis. So that's why we have the extra y-axis showing up. And I could have metrics that I don't even know what they are, but I can add them in and see these are not a very good correlation, but I've got one here that's another speed, and I'm going to add, well, I wasn't going to do that yet. I'm going to add that in so that I can see how it's behaving as well. Now, this one is a negative correlation, and you can see that it was higher between 30 and 100. It was up towards 100, but when the hammer force started going up, this metric went down. What I did before is I actually clicked on the metric name. So EDM popped out a chart showing me the original metric that I was correlating against and this new one. Okay, why would I want to do that? Okay, I have a classic example. This is on the IT side, but imagine you're trying to log into a website and you can't. And this is exactly what happened at one of our customers. They have several web servers, and they found that people could not log in. So they did a correlation. The metric was response time, right? Because what was happening is the users were trying to log in, and instead of getting the login screen, the thing was timing out after several seconds. And they did a correlation, and they found that there was a correlation, but it really wasn't that great. What we can do is we can pop this out and do another correlation, or add and delete some metrics. What they did is they took the correlation and they went back and edited it and added in other connections. Now we can add in, whatever we want. We're not going to, maybe not going to actually get anything, but we can say, don't just look at the current values and the current data set, go and look at the others as well. Now, I don't expect to get any, valid results here. Oh, see, so it's saying I don't even have the same time range for all of these connections. So EDM will do its best. Okay, so questions so far. Yeah, this is an old data set. Okay, let's look at our Linux system overview. We had looked at this a little bit before. The system was not doing much before. This is the Linux system where EDM is installed. But now that I've logged in and we've started moving around, we start seeing some activity. And that's the type of thing that you might want to do a correlation against. Okay. Now we have something else called ClariVore. And ClariVore happens when we have an alert. We talked a little bit about correlation, but we also talked about event data. And we said some connections include per process information. So in a Linux system, what that means is all of the systems that are actually active, all of the processes that are active on that system. And so when we looked at the Linux system, we can chart anything here. We'll chart disk busy. Okay, here's all of my partitions. And at the bottom of the chart, I got the list of active processes on this system. Again, this system is not particularly busy. It's running EDM, and pretty much that's all it's running. But we can run a ClariVore report on the system because it's going to give us a combination of these multiple things. Okay, here's what happens when you run a ClariVore report. I'm going to go back to my other EDM instance. Because I have a more recent alert. So this little icon right here says run a ClariVore report. Okay, so yesterday, this will be good. Yesterday I had a physical disk alert. We saw that. I had some others where I had memory. I had a memory issue here that lasted for a few minutes. Let's take a look at that. So memory percent free went way down. And what that means is probably something started, some process started, and it took up a bunch of memory. But it only lasted for a couple of minutes, and then the memory was released, and I'm back in business. If I click, instead of the display of this chart, I can click this little icon to the left. And what that icon is, it says run the ClariVore report. And that's a combination of a couple of things. First is the chart of the violation itself. So I said in my alert, if available memory goes less than 5, and here's my threshold, then trigger the alert. And it did. So EDM is giving me a little bit of information in addition to that. He's saying, here is the events. So these are the processes that were active on that system at the time of the alert. And so you can see that there was, our normal processes active, the EDM, DCS, and EDM processes, plus I've got a couple of other things running on the system. And maybe that's enough to tell you, okay, I'm looking at memory, but here we go. EDM was using a lot of CPU at that time. Okay, and then I have the correlation results. So we were looking at real percent free. That's my first metric. And then we have a couple of other memory metrics that correlated very well. And then I have this one, RSS, which is resident set size or memory in use for Sightline DB. We mentioned this yesterday. Sightline DB is the data repository. And don't take this as an indication that Sightline DB is just using all the memory, but because it was available, Sightline DB took it and then it released it, right? So it's a pretty typical behavior. So what this tells us is, in a nutshell, what was going on the system, so that the results of multiple different displays and multiple different analysis features are all included in the same result set or the same display. Okay, so this is, like I said, if you have event data especially, it will include all of these sections. If there's no event data, then that section will be empty, but you will get the display of the chart and also the results of the correlation, and then you can pop it out. Here's my correlation. Here's the results that we had looked at before, and EDM is giving you the same values. I can actually chart this resident set size, and so you can see right there, this one process, the green process, took a bunch of memory because it was available, but then after he was done doing whatever he needed to do, he released the memory, and now we're back to what I would call steady state on the system. Okay, so it's very easy to do the analysis steps, sometimes one at a time, sometimes in conjunction with others. So, questions? Okay, this is a really good time to take a break, and then we'll come back and talk about forecasting and a little bit about the underlying file structure that's under EDM. And actually, then we can call it a day, and we'll stay for questions if anybody has. Okay, so I have 10:21, so why don't we take a break for about 5 minutes or so, and then pick up where we left off.
Great. See you in a bit.
All right, see you in a few minutes.